Chris, what comes to mind when you see this photo?
Um, this photo, just like the first one we saw, um, it's just from a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
You can see more of the landscape behind you. For being in the desert, you don't think you're going to see much greenery, but as you can tell, right there on the river, it's pretty lush still.
Yeah.
Um, there's a bridge just behind us there, and if you take that bridge, you'll come across we're about 2.5, maybe 3 miles from Camp Taji, Iraq.
Okay. Why were you guys out there anyway? Why were you in this particular place? Do you remember what the crew was doing out there?
We were just out driving, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah.
We had went on a mission out the east gate.
Mm-hmm.
We were just there was rumors of our mortar teams and stuff out that way, and we got called out to kind of inspect it all and
Okay.
kind of see what it was.
Okay. And the river there is either the Tigris or the Euphrates, one of those.
One of
two.
those two, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chris, you don't pretend to be William Shakespeare or anything, right? But
That
you
is
did,
correct.
I think for an English class or for an English professor or in communication with an English professor here at John Brown University, you wrote some things down related to your experience in Iraq, and I wonder if you'd be willing to read this for us.
Yeah, I'd love to. Can't sleep. The world is spinning. Fear in the eyes of a woman hit by my Humvee. Improvised explosive devices on my left. IEDs on my right. Praying I'm not the next in line to be hit. Rocket-propelled grenades skipping off the brush guard of my truck. Multiple near-death encounters. Slit wrist. Loss of feeling. Hand going numb. Blood flowing like water as I await to be taken care of. 10 minutes away from being dead. I built a hatred for the people of the Middle East. Nightmares getting stronger. Sleep getting less. Grades beginning to slip. Can I go on, or should I just quit?
And you do go on, because you wrote this back in, what, 2009, 2010?
Actually, I wrote this here while I was here at JBU.
What year was that? I'm trying to think.
2014,
Oh, okay, yeah.
I believe is when I wrote this.
Yeah,
I'd already taken my English 1 class.
yeah.
I was actually sitting in one of the classrooms waiting for class to start, and it just started coming to me, so I wrote it down.
Yeah. As you were reading that, let's just look at it again. As you look at those words, what's the feeling, what's the thought that comes to mind just when you just look at this? This is just one part of something you wrote. I just pulled
Right.
it out of. But what's the main thought? What's the main feeling that comes to you?
Well, I was feeling lost. Just all of these floods of emotion started coming back to me, and the anger, the just where am I at in my life, and thinking about it, and I thought writing all this down would be therapeutic,
Sure.
and it actually made things a lot worse.
So I've heard that sometimes. I've heard some vets say, I've heard a good number say that talking and writing, mostly talking, helps, but others say it actually makes things worse. How did it make things worse for you?
It just, I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate, so all my grades started to slip. I was going from B's and C's to C's, D's, and F's in a matter of just a few months. So I couldn't focus and concentrate enough on the readings and the schoolwork to get my homework done.
Is that because you were letting yourself think about this
I was
stuff
letting
rather
myself
than just
think about
pushing
it.
down?
I just kept letting it. I let this take over. And so I ended up having to take medical leave from school. Got back to the VA, started getting seen, started getting some help.
Right.
Once that happened and I was able to let my anxiety reside, I was able to get back to school.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, my grades have improved quite a
Yeah,
bit. I'm
yeah.
now making A's, B's, and a few C's, whereas before I was making no A's in class.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Now, are the things that you've written, let's just go back. Are these things that you yourself experienced, or things that you knew happened, or a mix of both, or?
everything in this one was things that actually happened to me.
Wow. So, for example, a woman hit by my Humvee, right? The vehicle. Are you willing to share what that was? What happened?
Yeah,
What that was about?
we were setting barriers for the upcoming election, and we were in this alleyway, and my Humvee got hung up in the alleyway, and the rest of we were the very end of the convoy, so we were the last vehicle, and everybody had pulled out. And when we finally got out, there was a woman standing in the road, and I asked my squad leader who was sitting next to me, I was like, well, what do I do? And he said, don't stop. So I just put the pedal to the metal and kept on trucking.
Why was she standing in the road?
I don't know.
I mean, she must have. Was she looking at you?
She was looking right at me, and that's why if you look in it, and there's another. In my dreams, that's all I see is her eyes looking at me, because she was in her traditional dress attire, completely covered but her eyes, and so that's all I could see was her eyes. She was staring right at me.
Did she move at all?
She didn't even flinch.
Just stood there stoically. So, I mean, one of the questions is, I mean, what was going on with her? Right?
We don't know.
Yeah. We just don't know.
It could have been a number of things. Could have been the fact that the rest of the convoy went by, she thought it was the end, started to cross the street. When I come around the corner, she froze. Another option is that they know that we have a soft heart for women and children, and so they use that against us. And they'll have women and children playing in the road or whatever, because they know that we'll stop or slow down, and then they'll ambush. And so we were told,
just keep going.
Just keep going.
Was that part of the, I mean, under the rules of engagement, that was
It was.
allowed? I mean, how much distance was there between she has eyes on you, you have eyes on her, and then, the collision takes place? I mean, a couple seconds at least.
Just a few seconds at least.
Time enough for her to take 3 steps to get out of the way.
Time enough that if she wouldn't have froze, she could have got out of the way. But she looked at me, and just the look in her eyes of straight fear, it stuck with me this whole time. I don't think I'll ever get completely over it.
No, I can imagine. You play that over, imagine. So she's down, and what happens, the next 3 or 4 seconds after that?
I never looked back.
You just keep rolling?
I just kept on rolling.
Yeah, not thinking about it?
Well, I asked my gunner, because in the rear vehicle, the gunner faces the back. They face 6 o'clock. So I asked my gunner, I was like, is she moving? And he says no. And I said, good. I had no emotional tie, no remorse, no regrets
at that time. Well, another thing you mentioned in this section of what you wrote is I build a hatred for the people of the Middle East. Is that partly what's going on at this point?
I don't have a hatred for the people now.
now, but you were
Now.
you were describing what you felt back then.
I was describing how I felt back
Yeah.
then. And one of the things that sparked all of this is that there's an Indian couple that from actual India who own a convenience store right there by the house. And so I had went in, and so that kind of is where a lot of this started, because as soon as I walked in, without even knowing it, subconsciously, I was automatically angry, and it was like I just couldn't get out of that store fast enough.
Sure.
And so that's
You realized that you had that feeling. But is that, I mean, is that feeling that you had, is that partly related to the fact that for example, this woman, you don't know, was she just a woman who happened to be there who froze? Was she actually with the insurgency? You don't know. Is that part of the problem, that you got a 12-year-old kid who's smiling, but you don't know if that kid just planted an IED?
There's
that
a
the
trust
problem?
issue. There's a big trust issue.
Yeah.
And when you don't know who you can and cannot trust, you automatically assume the worst.
Yeah.
And that's how we were trained, was that don't trust anyone.
I mean, yeah, you got the training, but then I think there's also just human psychology.
Human psychology, human nature takes over.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of stories. I mean, if there are any stories of kids, but I mean, from Vietnam vets, I've heard stories of, 12-year-old kids who, whether willingly or not, to the extent that you can be willing accomplice as a 12-year-old, but willingly or not, 12-year-old kids who did things that were deadly, and you just get to this place, then, well, I guess I can't trust the 12-year-olds anymore. It doesn't matter if they're smiling or not.
Well, if we can go back to the poem
Yeah.
real quick,
Yeah.
the part where it says slit wrist, loss of feeling, hand going numb,
Yeah.
blood flowing like water.
Yeah.
An 8-year-old Iraqi kid cut me with a pocket knife, slit my wrist.
Wow. What was that all about? What's the story?
One of our NCOs, he was actually a really good kid. He come in, we were actually pulling security on a bridge, and a kid and his brother would come down, and they would pick up trash and stuff around the area and clean up, and we would pay them, $1 or something for doing it.
Yeah.
And we got to know them really well, and we were teaching them a little bit of English and stuff. So great kids, super happy-go-lucky. They didn't have any problems in the world. They were glad to see us. And one of my NCOs had his pocket knife out, and he wanted to see it. And so he handed it to him and let him look at it and stuff like that. Well, this NCO keeps his knives razor sharp. And we told him it was, hey, it's time to give it back, and he refused. And he started just waving it around.
Like
And
at you guys?
not at us, just kind of waving it around and stuff like that, just in the air. And me and one of my other NCOs went towards him. My NCO finally grabbed a hold of him, but he kept knife going from hand to hand, so I got in, finally got a hold of him. As soon as I got a hold of him, I told my NCO, I was like, okay, I've got him, to let him know that I had a hold of him. We could separate his hands and take the knife away. My NCO misunderstood what I said and let him go. He was squirming, and as he was squirming, the knife cut me. It got me.
Oh,
It
boy.
actually nicked that radial artery
Yeah.
and severed my radial nerve.
Jeez. Wow. Did the kid drop the knife at that point?
He did.
Yeah.
He dropped
Yeah.
the knife at that point. My unit, a lot of the guys were wanting to kill him, and I stepped in front of it,
Yeah.
I knew that it was just a freak accident.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that got me to realize that, hey, it was a true accident was that he didn't run away. He stayed right there by my side, took his shirt off his back, and was trying to give it to me to wrap my wrist to try to stop the bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
So he was trying to help me after the fact.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't let him kill a kid for something that wasn't done on purpose.
So it wasn't done on purpose, but I mean, would that make you more reluctant next time to come into close contact with even an 8-year-old kid?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
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 Even though it was that accident, you know, you start to become leery because then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, was it truly an accident? Did he have, you know, is he
Mhm.
trying to cover up, you know?
Mhm.
So then you start losing that trust.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what leads to, that's probably what leads to the sense that, well, as you say, I mean, it built a hatred for the people of the Middle East, right? You just kind of, I hate all these people because this situation's awful. I don't know who I can trust. And did you have any operations at all with Iraqi forces?
We did work a little bit with some of the Iraqi police and some of the Iraqi National Guard.
Mm.
Not in one of our missions, we worked directly with some Iraqi military.
Yeah.
One of our missions, we went into the palm groves with our metal detectors
Mm.
and looked for weapons caches and stuff
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. When you were working with them, did you feel that you could trust them?
No,
No. Yeah.
I got to the point to where I just didn't trust anybody.
Is that just you, or do you think that feeling was general among the guys you worked with in the Army?
I think a lot of them were leery.
Yeah.
They never really outspoke whether or not they could or couldn't or how they felt towards them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know me personally, I didn't trust any of them.
Yeah. Just kind of a big picture question. You know, you're there early 2004, and then you do a 12-month tour, is that right?
That is correct.
12-month tour, so going into early 2005. I mean, this is when the insurgency is tough. I mean, this is a really tough time to be there. So far as you knew at the time, I mean, what were you doing there anyway? What was the mission? I mean, you had your daily missions, but what was the big mission?
All I know is that we were there for the war on terrorism.
Yeah.
There were rumors of weapons of mass destruction. So we were there to try to, you know, find those,
Yeah.
stop terrorism, and that was what we were told. So
Yeah. I mean, it was linked to that.
it was linked to that. There was rumors that we were there for the oil,
Mm.
and as far as I know, and as far as some of the research that I've done, that was never the intention was to be there for their oil.
I don't think so.
So
Yeah.
it was the fact that the terrorist flew into our Twin Towers. They attacked us on our own homeland, and President Bush was not going to stand for that.
Right.
He did not want to bring a war here, so we took the war to them.
Yeah, and of course 9/11 was planned in Afghanistan, but, you know, the concern was that Saddam Hussein had ties to terrorists and the weapons of mass destruction. And it gets very complicated and very political. But so far as you knew, as an army soldier in Iraq, you know, this is basically linked to the war against terrorism, and we got to fight the bad guys here, so we don't have to fight them in our own backyard.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll end this discussion here, and then we'll have another. Thank you.
You're welcome.